Hello, and welcome to Hanratty on Karate. Pretty cold day here in Calgary, Alberta, where I'm from. It's like minus 25 or something like that, and we have persistent light snow, which isn't very good. What I want to talk about today is body mechanics, biomechanics, if you like, which is basically the study of how the body moves and what you want to do with it to get it to move in the most efficient and less harmful way. So we come across this quite a lot in karate. And if you've been around karate as long as I have, 50 odd years, 55 years, you get to know a fair bit about anatomy. Either you've had to put some injuries right or you've suffered injuries yourself. So when you're looking at basic body mechanics, you must understand that your body is always under some kind of stress. There's always some kind of force acting on your body. Even if you're just lying in bed, there's a gravitational force acting on your body. You know you can't lie in one position too long because of pressures, because we may be having our weight pushed down, but then the resistance is going to cause pressure in that spot. Now, if we take this to a standing position, we have to have a look at posture. Posture is really important in karate, as we all know. You know, your instructor should have or would tell you, stand straight, make sure your body line is 90 degrees to the floor, and you have a good solid base. And hopefully, if he's a good instructor, he'll explain to you the value of center of gravity and line of gravity. And if you're unsure about that, you can have a look at my book called The Shotokan Karate Handbook. And there's a good chapter on explaining line of gravity and center of gravity and why it's important. So when you're looking at biomechanics and any kind of movement, but particularly in karate, which is what we're going to do just now, I'm going to take a quick look at it. And the reason why I'm looking at it is because over the years, I've met a lot of instructors, a lot of different instructors, Japanese instructors, almost just about any good instructor you can think of. I've probably met them or trained with them or learned something from them, read something by them, whatever. And when you're looking at Shotokan Karate, Nishiyama was probably one of the best teachers for body mechanics that you can get. Now, what you're looking for is, first of all, you want to look at the end result. What do you want to achieve, and then how you're going to achieve it. And it doesn't matter if it's a punch, a kick, a strike, a throw, or a joint manipulation technique. It's all going to come down to body mechanics and how you use them. And Nishiyama was very good in his book, This is Karate with Richard Brown, which I've mentioned before was probably a result of all of the reports he received from his instructor program. However, some of the people who did those reports put a lot of thought into them, and the result was this book. That's my opinion anyway. So what you're looking at here is why we stand in the stances that we do, what we use these stances for. It's just a particular foot position or where the gravity or the weight is distributed that defines the stance. And Nishiyama split them into two main types of stance. That is outside tension stance and inside tension stance. Now with outside tension stance, the main factor in outside tension stance is that the core, the glutes and the lower pelvis pushed forward and out. I know you can't turn your hips out. You can't rotate your pelvis in opposite directions, one side from the other. But the idea would be to keep the glutes really tight and the core really tight and push out, and at the same time push down so that you lower your center of gravity. So that's an outside tension stance, and the basic stances in that group would be front stance and kutsudachi, back stance, kokotsudachi, kibadachi, side stance, furudachi or sochindachi, whichever you want to call it, a rooted stance. Even just shizentai, where you're standing up with your feet straight ahead and shoulder wide, nice, ready, relaxed stance, but then feel like you engage your core and then feel like you drop your shoulders. Your center of gravity is going to lower. It's a really good way of getting into touch with your center and also pushing down. Now, I took a couple of Tai Chi sessions, and they use this, dropping the weight down from the core, from your belly button, kind of moving it down towards the groin, and everything else just relaxes on top of it, but you keep this little tight core within you. Anyway, that was outside tension stances. And then the other group of stances that Nishiyama named was called inside tension stances. And these are also kind of self-explanatory. You have Neko Ashidachi, which is cat stance, Sanchin Dachi, and a couple of others. Brunoji Dachi to some extent, and Tedachi. But what happens there was we would drop the knees in and then lift the pelvis up. At the same time, you're pushing down. So you push down, lift the pelvis, almost like you're pulling her up. So you're pulling all of the tension into the lower part, but you're pulling in rather than pushing out from the main core muscles around the center. So those two types of stances, and they both have their uses. And we find Neko Ashidachi is prominent in Shito-ryu and a lot of other styles, and of course Zenkotsudachi and Kokotsudachi. Kokotsudachi is a little bit more unique to Shotokan style. Almost all Kokotsudachi stances or back stances involved in Shito-ryu are performed in Nekoashi or cat stance. What we need to look at, and the reason why I decided to do this little chat today, just a little discussion, and I hope you will discuss it, was because one of my students, and I allow them to go out to seminars anywhere, one of my students had gone out to a seminar by, I gotta say it again, a JKA instructor. And he tried to tell the student that he was doing his stance wrong. Now, when I do, say, a front stance, I'll pick the easiest stance, a front stance or Zenkotsudachi. We start off, the width of the stance should be hip width or shoulder width, whatever you want, doesn't really matter. And I like the front knee forward of the ankle. It doesn't have to be over the toe, but mine is. When I do my stance, I push it over my toe, get a deeper stance. Back leg not entirely straight, so it doesn't push your hip up, but kind of enough that you can apply leverage forward. Now, I'm going to come back to leverage in a minute, but at the same time, you want to kind of tense up your core and try to feel like you're pushing the upper thigh away or forward in the direction of your movement. So your body, of course, is 90 degrees perpendicular to the stance. Now, your hips can be hamni, half-facing, or shomen, full-facing front. It doesn't matter on the stance, depends on your application or what technique you're going to use. But basically, your stance is the platform that you build your techniques on. And they're extremely transitory. You only hit your stance for a second while your technique is delivered. Usually you're in motion. You better be in motion, otherwise you're going to get hit. So this is the stance. Now, I asked my students, so what was different that you were told? And they said, well, they kind of released the tension in the core, so the backside is kind of a little bit soft. And then when they apply the technique, they push through the heel into the technique and drive forward. But it's kind of like bending your knees to jump up instead of just jumping up. If you have to jump up, you're going to jump up. You're not going to go down and then jump up. If somebody says, how high can you jump? yeah, you'll bend your knees, you'll load up your legs, you'll load up all your muscles, you'll stretch your Achilles and everything, and you plow off the floor and go as high as you can. But if you just have to jump immediately, you'll just jump. And basically that's what you want. You want an instantaneous reflex response if you're going to make a technique. That's why you're training your technique, to make it instantaneous and reflexive. Anyway, it just didn't sit right with me, and so I went back to my old way of thinking, which is what I'd been taught by Nishiyama. The other thing that came through was the direction of the front foot. Now, I was always taught Nishiyama and the Noida and every instructor I've ever met, a nice straight line down the outside of your front foot in the direction of your opponent or your travel. Knee pointed the same way, okay? And if you're doing your knee in the same way, of course, your hip is going to be in the same alignment with your knee. You can still have the other hip pulled back so you get full rotation if you're making power through a rotational technique. It's the same with cold cuts. Quite often you see the knee falling in, and all that means is that the backside isn't tense enough to keep the knee in alignment with the ankle. You should align your joints in the direction you want to travel. This is basic mechanics. If you want to go one way, then your joints should go that way. You don't want to be going along with one foot going in a different direction than the other. So what you need to do is you need to define or identify the optimal position for the technique that you want to perform. Then you're going to have to recruit the muscle groups required to make that technique the most efficient that you can. And I'm going to add the most power that you can here. And power and efficiency are not always synonymous, all right? Some people will overpower, overstress, and if you're tensing muscles, all you're doing is putting the brakes on. So you have to relax, but recruit the muscles that you require right up until the moment of impact. And it all comes down to a simple formula, because karate, like everything else in the world, is physics. You can't go outside the physical realm. I don't care who you are or what you do. The basic laws of physics apply, and they apply in karate as well as everything else that you do, okay? So we know mass times speed equals force, and there's the key, speed. Speed is required if you want to be efficient in any kind of movement, in sports or karate or anything else. And efficiency comes with familiarity, which is why we practice a technique so often. Once you're familiar with it, you get more efficient. I always use the analogy with my students. If I go to your house and I say, can I have a cup of coffee? And you'd say to me, yeah, grab a cup from the cupboard. It would probably take me 5 or 10 minutes to find out which cupboard and whereabout you keep your cups, whereas you probably unconsciously just reach for it. That's familiarity, and it's efficiency, right? Because you go straight there, get your cup, you come back, all right? And that's the same thing that you apply when you're doing karate techniques. However, the familiarity starts to fall down when you're not using correct physics, all right? If your body is not moving the right way, then you're going to reach a point where the physical law is going to say, hang on, you're doing this wrong and you're going to get hurt, okay? And this is forces acting on you that, you may not be aware of. And that's why people get injuries doing karate. They either hyperextend the elbow on uchi or back fist strikes, or they open the shoulder too much and they pull the shoulder. They don't know how to fall, and so they put stresses on places and you get dislocations and fractures. Okay? So what you need to really do is kind of have a look at the anatomy. And the human body has got a load of different systems in it, but the main system that you want to look at for the martial arts would be the muscular system, the skeletal system, and the nervous system. Now, I know we have respiratory and digestive and all this, and circulatory system with the blood flow and all that. And we use it a lot in different techniques. If you're putting a chokehold on, a well-applied chokehold, an efficiently applied chokehold, will put your opponent out within 10 to 15 seconds. A partial chokehold, the one that's not quite properly applied, it's going to take longer and you're going to have more of a struggle on your hand. It's the same with a throw. If you don't apply the leverage correctly, it becomes a test of strength. So you need to apply your leverage in the right way. And this is another physical force. Basically, we're using an ancient engine, if you like. I think there was 5 ancient engines: wheels, pulley, lever. So we're looking at levers, and almost all the throws and joint manipulations in karate are what we call first-class levers. When you can have a first-class lever, basically it's force, fulcrum, and load. Now, where you apply the fulcrum and the force determines how much you're going to move the load, or how big a load you can move. And usually we'll use arms or legs to apply the force, and either your hip, shoulder, or your forearm would be the fulcrum. And then moving yourself around or applying the force in a certain way, you're going to get the load to move or collapse or whatever. If you look at Archimedes, he said, I think it was Archimedes anyway, if you give me a big enough lever, I could move the world. And a place to rest it on, which is the fulcrum. So we're using them all of the time in different techniques and different applications. So yeah, you need to pick up something on all of these systems, because these systems are what run you, what run your opponent, and you are looking for ways to disrupt this system. That's the way that you're going to stop your opponent or deliver enough force that you're going to deter him. Right? So you're using these systems, and you need to know how to do it and what to do. Now, there's 2 different schools of thought on how the systems run. One is the Eastern method, which involves ki and acupuncture and acupressure and all of these meridian points and stuff like that. And the other is basic physics. Now, I'm an engineer by profession, and so I lean towards the more basic physics type. And so I can explain almost everything I do using basic engineering technology. And I like doing that. I like seeing how the laws of physics apply to what I'm doing. And I hope that this little conversation will maybe spur you to have a look at what you're doing, how you're doing it. Pick up Shotokan Karate Handbook. It's got some good information in it, and see how it applies to you and what you're doing, and also analyze what you're doing. Remember, forces are acting upon you all day, every day. I just read an article, actually, that young people are starting to develop spurs on the lower skull. And this is because the posture now is tending towards down, where they're looking at the phones or iPads all day. Now, this may not seem like a major thing, but it is. When your body is modifying itself because of the posture that you're adopting, and it's not a healthy modification, then you should be concerned. And it's the same when you're teaching stances. If you're not teaching them the right way, your students are going to start to get injuries, or they're going to start to feel muscle pulls or muscle tears or strains and sprains. And this is the difference. Go and have a look up and see what the difference is between strains and sprains. You should all have a good background in first aid. And if you haven't, then go get one, because you owe it to your students. And if you're a student and you owe it to yourself, go look up first aid, learn a bit about anatomy, learn about the human body and what you're doing with it, what you want to do with it, and how long you want it to last. And that's important. I mean, I'm probably past my sell-by date, but I think I've looked after myself pretty well, given that I've treated my body pretty harshly over the years. 55 years of karate and a lot of stuff before that. Certainly hasn't done me any favors, but then again, I'm still here. Anyway, have a great day. I hope you'll pick up on this and run with it. Take care.